So I'm really excited about this new series that I'm starting called Ask Krystal, and this is the first segment or episode of this series. I got a little thing out here. And I hope you guys enjoy it. I got this idea because sometimes making content can be overwhelming, and I was like, I need to still be giving quality content, still be bringing value to you all. And what better way to do that and kind of make things less complicated for me than just to find out what you guys want to know and make videos about it. And if you would like to be able to have your questions answered anonymously, you can join my patron family. You do have to be a top tier member, and top tier members get to ask questions along with some really great videos, educational videos, juicy videos, yoga videos. There's a lot of things that come with the top tier membership, but this is something new that I'm adding, but everybody gets to benefit. So this week, these questions are being answered from one person. And probably because maybe not everybody knows about it, but I'm hoping that the more I make these videos, the more people will be aware. And these are some really good questions. I think a lot of people can benefit from them. I also want to say before I give this advice, give a little disclaimer. Take my advice with a grain of salt. I try to share. When I share, I usually share from a place of experience. So I usually don't talk about anything or share anything that I feel like I don't have a lived, embodied experience with. But when you're asking me questions, I'm not really sure what you guys are going to ask me. But I'm assuming that sometimes you guys just want to know my perspective, you know, because of my background or whatever. And so, but just know that I may be speaking on some topics that I don't have lived specific experience with. And, or I may have limited knowledge on. So take what I say with a grain of salt and just take what resonates and leave the rest. But that's for everything that I say, okay? Because the truth is, nobody knows everything, no matter what kind of degrees or certifications that they have. And you always want to do what's best for you. And I don't know the specific details of your situation. So the first question is, how do you sustain intimacy in a long-term relationship? And I am assuming that this is a romantic relationship and you are talking about sex, right? This is a good question because I actually have never been in a long-term relationship where the sex was good throughout the entire time. I hope to be in one of those one day. And I also find that as soon as the sex starts to kind of fall off, the physical intimacy starts to fall off, that's usually when the decline of the relationship is happening too. I do think some people just settle and just stay in it. Some people cheat and just stay in the relationship. But usually when the physical intimacy starts to fall off, that means that there's other issues going on in the relationship. So I think that's first thing to keep in mind. And I know this from experience. And I just never stayed in those relationships because I understood that there were deeper problems. I explored those things and then I left, or the person left me or whatever. So I guess that's one answer, is that you have to make sure that you're checking in with your person in other areas. Like, you can't expect for the physical intimacy or the sex to be good and maintained if emotionally you're disconnected, if you are not like still good friends and respecting each other, being honest with each other. The reason why I emphasize the importance of sex in a relationship, because it's a physical manifestation of how much you desire to still be with that person. The wanting of, of being around that person. It's a manifestation of how close you actually are. Nobody really wants to have sex with somebody and live with them on a regular basis if they're disconnected in other ways in the relationship, or if they're mad or whatever. And you might be able to do it temporarily, like if you hook up with somebody or you're dating someone casually, you might use their bodies to have some type of relief, which is a whole nother conversation that I feel like needs to be had too, that I haven't talked about, is people have sex for a plethora of other reasons other than pleasure, which is really sad. You have people who have sex for money. You have people who have sex because they're stressed out, because they want to be wanted, they want to be desired, they want to be validated. There's a lot of other reasons, or they think they're just supposed to, or they feel like it's their duty. People have sex for a lot of other reasons than just for pleasure or because they like to be with the person. I think sometimes that's subconsciously embedded in people's minds. I don't care if you're married to the person. I don't care if you think you want to marry this person. You should not be having sex with someone other than you want to. You're excited to. You want to share an intimate, pleasurable exchange with them. You shouldn't be trying to dominate them. You shouldn't be trying to manipulate them. You shouldn't be abusing the act because it's very intimate. It's something that's very sacred. It should be pleasurable. If it's not pleasurable, you shouldn't be doing it. So if you want to sustain that intimacy, I think that you need to make sure other areas of the relationship are good. You need to have regular communication. You need to be spending quality time with each other. A lot of times we evolve over time. So you need to check in and see what your partner or your lover is interested in at the moment. And I think that when you are in a relationship because you actually like the person, I think this naturally occurs. Now, if you want to keep things exciting, you have to keep learning and growing. That's like any area of your life, right? If someone cooks the same 3 meals every week for like 10 years, you might get tired of that. So sometimes you need to try some new recipes to spice things up, literally, right? Or maybe you go out to eat sometimes, or maybe you go to a cooking class and you learn some new recipes, or you look up some recipes online on TikTok. I think it's the same way with physical intimacy. If you want your sex life and your intimate life to be good, especially if you're having sex with the same person, but even if you weren't, but especially in a long-term relationship, you need to keep learning. You need to consider going to some retreats that help you learn about intimacy or learn some new things. You need to maybe read some books, go to a workshop. Maybe, like there's lots of things out there now, especially with kink and BDSM, and you don't have to like immerse yourself into the culture. But I think that just being around different educators, get different somatic practitioners, having different experiences, exploring, you need to be constantly exploring by yourself and with your partner, I think, in order to have a healthy, intimate life long term, which requires like an authentic connection, requires emotional safety, requires you to be in tune with your partner. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people in long-term relationships just aren't. The second question is, when is a healthy time to start having conversations about intimacy in a new relationship? I think that probably depends on the people involved. A lot of people just are not comfortable talking about sex. For me, I want to know pretty soon. I want to know pretty soon. I probably don't date like the normal single person just because my life is online and everything. But if I were to go out and dating, because I met somebody either out in the street or online, I think it's something that naturally comes up. Like if you are romantic, like again, a lot of people are interested in people for egotistical reasons. A lot of people are interested in people because they have a good job, they have good credit score. And not saying that all these things are not important. You need to have similar belief systems, similar lifestyles, and things like that. But I feel like you're more likely to meet these people if it's not online and you're just out doing your thing and you just run into these people. Like certain people who have certain lifestyles hang out and do certain things. And that's why it's best to just meet people organically, I think. However, if you're just like swiping and you are just like meeting people on social media, or you meeting people through a dating app, and you're just hoping that there's true compatibility, people aren't lying and stuff like that, then I think you might want to ask after the first couple of really deep conversations. I think talking about sex, if you're looking for a romantic partnership, is something that should naturally come up in the flow of conversation, depending on the type of conversations that you're having. If you're just speaking to someone from an egotistical place, then that may never come up. And again, sex is something that's deep, and it's a reflection of how authentic the connection is. If you are interested in someone because there's a resonance around your heart space and around your pleasure center, I think naturally talking about sex will organically come up, especially if you're really into somebody. Now, if you're not really into them, it may never come up. So that's kind of a hard question to answer. But I would say you should just organically let it flow. And so that might sound, for some people, that might sound like when you've had a couple conversations and you kind of gotten past like where you're from, what you do for a living, and things like that, the next conversations probably are going to be like how you grew up, what hobbies, like what are the things that bring you pleasure? What are the things that excite you? And what are what's your love language? And some people have a very, very, very hard time talking about physical intimacy, even if they like kissing or touching or things like that. So that can be very difficult, honestly. That's something that people sometimes need to unpack. They need therapy or a coach for. I'm here for. If you cannot talk to somebody that you're just getting to know within the first couple of deep conversations, where if you're not just talking surface level, then you probably need help, and your person that you're into might need help. But I say that's something you probably want to know within the first deep conversations. Like when you get past the what's your name, how old are you, what are you doing for a living, where do you live, things like that. After you've had, when you start having conversations about like what are the things that you like to do, maybe after the first or second date, but really it's not about the dating, it's about the conversations. Like I feel like I haven't really dated traditionally in a while, but once you get past the surface level stuff, hopefully you're having deeper conversations about who the person is. And after that, like second or third conversation of like getting to know somebody on a deeper level, I would think you kind of want to know what they're into to see if you're compatible. And also just like if you're interested into them romantically, hopefully because you find some type of magnetism or attraction, like that would be a natural flow of conversation, because that's should be a big part of what you're looking for, right? Is physical intimacy. I think a lot of times it's not about when you start to have this conversation, it's about the words that you use and being aware of like what's appropriate in the timing, and like I said, it should flow organically. And if some of the things that you say turn that person off, or they're not comfortable, then that might not be the person for you. I feel like the last time that I was dating, like for a long-term relationship, again, it also depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for something more casual, you might bring it up right away. If you are looking for something more long-term, again, it might come after a few deep conversations. But I do think it's something that should happen sooner rather than later. But, that's a kind of, that answer requires, I feel like, a lot more nuance. Because I think if you're looking for something casual, you might want to know that right away. Do you like to eat ass? Do you eat pussy? Do you like sensuality? Are you a demisexual? If you're looking just to kind of hook up or have friends with benefits, that's probably needs to be one of the first two conversations that you have. If you're looking for something more long term, it might be within like the first or second deep conversation that you have, right? I hope that makes sense. The third question is, if one partner is comfortable talking about sex and the other isn't, how can you normalize those conversations in a way that feels safe and respectful for both people? I also think this is a good question. Again, I think a lot of this has to do with compatibility. If one person is really comfortable speaking a certain way about sex and the other person isn't, it might mean that there's not a lot of compatibility there. Because I feel like, just coming from a Tantra Yoga perspective, if someone cannot express what they like in the bedroom, or they're really hesitant, with giving details, there are some blockages there, and they may not be ready for a romantic relationship. Or if one person is able to say it and the other person isn't, there is a lack of compatibility there. Because when a person is unable to clearly express what pleases them during physical intimacy, usually it's because of guilt, it's because of shame, it's because of blockages. And so, if that's the case, they probably are not really ready for a romantic partnership. I'm sorry. And either it could be a case where you are okay waiting and seeing if they come through. But I know, like, for me, that would probably be a red flag and possibly a turnoff. But if you feel like, but if the person is aware that this is a problem for them and they want to work on that, then I think that, excuse me, then I think that that could be, that could be actually a good sign. And the way you could help that person, I think a good way to help people express themselves, if you're the one that's more expressive and the other person is to play games. There's all kind of little card games out. There's all kinds of little, like, playful ways to figure out what somebody likes and what they don't. You could, start off. So, like, what's your favorite R&B group? What's your favorite love song? Who's your celebrity crush, and who's sexy to you, and why are they, why do they turn you on? But like I said, I know there's like a game called Would You Rather, it's a really sexy game that I saw online, but you could create this yourself. You could be like, would you rather be kissed on the neck, or would you rather be kissed on your lower abdomen? You could create that type of game for yourself. And I think that kind of, if when sex comes across more light-hearted and more like a playful, fun activity, I think that releases some of the pressure from people. But, you have to be comfortable doing that. So I would say playing little games, getting little, ordering little stuff online that helps facilitate the questions around intimacy. And I don't think there's anything that could be disrespectful if you if if that's important to you or important to the other person. If you are dating someone and you're looking for a romantic connection, whether it's casual or long term, I don't see how any questions about sex could be disrespectful. Now, if you can't read the room, or you can't read the energy, or you have a lack of tact, then I could see how maybe it could be off-putting. And again, there could be a lack of compatibility there, but it doesn't mean that it's disrespectful. If you're dating someone and you're looking for a romantic connection, that usually means that you're going to want to have sex with the person or be physically intimate with the person, especially if you're an adult. And I think sometimes people forget that, especially women. Sex should be on the table. If not, you just need to be friendly. Like, dating is fun, but the reason to date is to make a romantic connection. Romantic connections for adults require physical intimacy or sex, just straight up sex. And so I think just in general, we as a collective need to get more comfortable talking about it and releasing the shame, because as adults, that's a healthy thing to do. Communication, like, I think that if we overthink things and over politicize things, which I think is happening way too much lately, the exchange can become stale and inauthentic, and you're constantly guessing, and then you don't know who you're really dealing with, because we're playing roles again, and that's egotistical and it's not authentic. So if you have someone you're in a relationship dynamic where one person is more comfortable than the other talking about sex, I would first say that you need to check to see if it's even a compatible situation. And sometimes people will, like, talk a good game and then not really be about it. But again, it takes two to tango. So you have to be able to, on the other end, you have to be able to tell somebody what they want. Even if they want to do a good job, everybody's different. Everybody likes different stuff. So as adults, we both need to be able to talk about it. But if you have trouble, or if one person has trouble, I think pulling out a card game, and looking for some assistance, sometimes coaching. But I think games are a fun way to do it. I don't think anybody should censor themselves too much, because then you'll be doing that throughout the whole relationship. And then you also will not get to know who the person really is. If you're constantly overextending, that means you're not being yourself. And again, like I said, there may not be a lot of compatibility there. And that's important to know in the beginning. Even if you feel like this person has everything, you don't want to give up on them. If you are looking for a romantic connection and there is incompatibility in the bedroom, that's a huge problem, short term and long term. So you might just have to wait on somebody that's more compatible. But if the person is open and they're giving you the energy, like, I want to talk about this, but this is hard, then you can try to, whichever person it is, you can try to play games. You can like try to find other ways to indirectly find out. But like I said, you don't want to overcompensate too much, because sometimes it just means that the person needs to do some work. And that's what I'm here for. It doesn't mean that it's a lost cause, but people need to address that. You need to understand why you have a hard time talking about sex. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this first episode of Ask Krystal. If you have some questions you would like me to ask, you can join my patron family, and maybe I'll answer your questions next.